He was 5 feet tall, 152 centimeters, and yet he becomes a giant in San Antonio's history and culture. I'm Brent with Amigo Walking Tours, and this is the premiere episode of People I Can't Talk About. William Menger was one of the many Germans who migrated to Texas in the mid-1800s. He gets on a boat in Bremen, Germany, and makes his way to San Antonio via Indianola, the port of Texas, in 1847. He's only 20 years old when he arrives, and his profession's that he's a cooper. He's making barrels for beer and wine, but also for supplies like flour and bacon, molasses, crackers, things that are important to families and individuals during this time of history. And so when he arrives in the city, there he is making his barrels. In fact, it continues to be his profession for the next several years, including when he meets a woman named Mary, who he eventually falls in love with and will wed in the year 1851. William Menger realizes that he has the heart of an entrepreneur, as does his wife Mary, who has her own boarding house that she runs quite successfully. And so he increasingly questions, how can I do this better? What else can I do to progress in life and in business? That results in him opening a grocery store with a partner, and it's mildly successful, but he continues to think, what more can I do? He sees an opportunity to do something and he realizes, man, this is fantastic. There's no fresh beer in San Antonio, and you see the city's population is growing, especially its German population. And William Menger says, this is it. This is something that I can do. And so he also thinks to himself, man, if brewing takes off as an industry in San Antonio, so will the demand for barrels. And so we start to see this awareness William Menger has. If he can increase business in areas that are interrelated, then he'll benefit many times over. So in 1855, he opens the Western Brewery, and it takes quite a bit of thought. It's the first brewery in San Antonio. It's also considered to be the first commercial brewery in the state of Texas. And as he's trying to plan it, he realizes he will need an environment to brew this beer and to store it that is cool year-round. This is Texas. It is hot, and that's going to be a problem for him. But to mitigate this challenge, he makes a cellar with walls that are 3 feet thick, 91 centimeters, and it provides a constant temperature that is cool and pleasant throughout the year. He also uses a nearby water channel called the Acequia Madre to cool this cellar for his brewing purposes. And so he overcomes these challenges, and pretty soon he asks himself again, what more can I do? He realizes that some people might want a single serving of beer instead of an entire barrel, so he opens a tavern. He recognizes there's a need for people to spend the night after a late night on the town or when passing through San Antonio. And he thinks, what if Mary's boarding house was located in the same place as the tavern and the brewery? And so he centralizes them together. And then he realizes another challenge is that most of the business in San Antonio, most of the foot traffic, is not here where his businesses are based near Alamo Plaza, but they're over at Main Plaza and Military Plaza, about a 7-minute walk away. So Menger sends carriages to go to those busy plazas and tell people, hey, do you want a spot for refreshment far away from all these crowds? Man, get in, we'll give you a ride over there. And he starts these carriages coming back and forth from Main Plaza to Alamo Plaza where he's based. And through all of these efforts, he sees tremendous growth, not just in one area of business, but in all of them. And Menger goes, this is excellent, this is good. What really solidifies William Menger in San Antonio's history is his next idea. He thinks, people need a nice place to stay when they come to San Antonio. We're a growing city. There's business individuals. There's people that want to be in a nicer environment than what's currently available. What if we made a fine hotel here in the city? So in 1858, he starts the planning process, and Experience is everything to William Menger. It reminds me of Steve Jobs. People said that he was obsessed with the experience of packaging, just opening the box, the sound, the feel of when you get an iPhone. William Menger felt the same way. First impressions were everything, and so he looks for the best builder in San Antonio, and he chooses a man named John Kempman, a German builder. He also selects a German architect named John Fries. And as he's picturing what the experience will be for guests of the hotel, he goes, what will it be like once people step inside the doors? He starts putting together an all-German staff, a group of individuals who have a common shared experience and an understanding of what European standards of hospitality are like. He says, you're the person that I want working in this hotel. You're the person I want to help craft this experience. And so what ends up happening, he gets Germans to work for him that might otherwise be farmers in a field, who might otherwise just be salesmen, but instead he brings them in and allows them to build on skills and expertise they already had in Germany. And in this way, he fights against underemployment of individuals who are highly skilled. Another way William realizes he can shape guest experience is inspired by Mary, his wife. She's known to be the best cook in all of San Antonio. And William says we can use food at the hotel. We can combine recipes and ingredients from Europe and provide cuisine that has rarely, if ever, been available in the city. And so they commit to that, not just to find food, but also to find drinks that William's collected from all over the world. He realizes they'll be brought here and served, and that's excellent, but that they'll be warm, and he says that's not good enough. They've traveled halfway around the world. They should be served cold as they're meant to be. How do you serve a cold drink? It hasn't changed in all these years. You put ice in it. Problem is, there was no ice in San Antonio in 1859. And so what William Menger does, he purchases a block of ice from Boston, Massachusetts. They put it on a ship and they sail it to the port of Texas, Indianola, and take it by carriage up to San Antonio. And that is where it is presented to guests. When they order a drink, someone goes down and they take a hammer and a chisel and they chisel off a block of that ice, put it in the glass of guest, and as they stand in the lobby of the hotel, there's ice clinking against the crystal as they are talking with one another. What amazing quality that this hotel made possible in our city. The front entrance is just here behind me, and there's even some grates on the ground there where one can look in and see a bit of the very large basement at the Menger Hotel. Quality was fantastic. Guests were thrilled when the hotel opened. The final cost was $15,712, and the hotel opened on February 1st, 1859. Throughout its history, it had all kinds of guests that came here, including this guy whose statue is behind me, Teddy Roosevelt, who was a guest and also a frequent patron of the bar. More than just a businessman, William Menger also emerges as a civic leader in San Antonio. He's elected as the chief of the San Antonio Volunteer Fire Department. And on a trip to New York one day, he sees a building catch fire, and this vehicle pulls up, a steam engine that's pumping water to put the fire out. And William Menger thinks, man, we need that in San Antonio. So he spends $4,000 of his own money to bring a steam engine to the city of San Antonio. And the headlines at the time say, we are safe now. People celebrate, and they start establishing William Menger as kind of a local hero. It's not the last time, because also in 1867, there's word and concern in San Antonio that the U.S. military are leaving. The city has grown too big, and the military think that the expenses are too high in the city. And William Menger relies upon the U.S. Army being present in the city for both direct and indirect business. That was the case for many business people. And so William Menger says there's got to be something we can do about this. Across the street from the Menger Hotel, William constructs a facility that is to government specifications for the U.S. Army. There's a warehouse, adequate water supply. It's a place where the military can be for the next decade or so. And then he approaches the government and says, listen, I will lease this facility to you at a sub-market rate that you won't find anywhere else. In fact, you basically can't afford to leave San Antonio because this is such a good deal. It keeps the military in San Antonio, and in fact, they stay in that facility for the next 10 years. So San Antonio today is known as Military City, USA, and that's largely because of William Menger and the efforts he took to keep the military in the city. Lastly, I wanted you to know that in 1869, some individuals come together and they said, you know, San Antonio is big enough now. It needs an official medical facility. And William Menger becomes the chief benefactor of the hospital that will become one of the biggest in San Antonio and contribute to a healthy and safe future for the city. In fact, we still have that hospital around today. And so he was a huge, huge character in San Antonio's history. In March 1871, William Menger grew gravely ill, and in fact, just 3 days after his 44th birthday, he dies of this illness, which honestly we don't have many details about. But what we do know is that the city entered into a chapter of mourning. This great individual who'd been lost, not just a brewer, but also an innkeeper, a civic leader, a fire chief, a friend of the U.S. military, a chief benefactor of a hospital, and a tremendous force for progress in the city, was lost. And mourners filled the streets as the funeral procession made its way east on Commerce Street from downtown and brought the remains of William Menger here to Cemetery Number 1, where his body was laid to rest on this plot. 9 years later, in fact, another individual would be buried not far from him, John Fries, the architect of the Menger Hotel. They say in San Antonio, those who lived alongside each other also were buried alongside each other, and that's certainly true here. And as his body is laid to rest in the days that follow, the citizens of San Antonio say, what now? What will happen? What of the Menger Hotel? What of the Menger Brewery? What of the progress that this individual has helped make possible in our city? Will it all disappear? Mary Menger emerges from her grief. She steps into the light and she gives San Antonians a resounding answer. Just 1 week after her husband's burial, she places a notice in the San Antonio Express News saying, "The death of the late owner and proprietor will cause no change in affairs at the hotel as well as the brewery. Signed, Mrs. W.A. Menger." And it is thanks to her leadership and to her business savvy that the legacy of William Menger continues to be visible even today as we walk the streets of the city. She was an incredible businesswoman herself, and her story is further explored in its own episode, which is linked in the description below, so be sure to watch that. I'd like to thank Dosha Schultz-Williams for her excellent book, The History and Mystery of the Menger Hotel, as well as Julia Brookins of the American Historical Association for her research, both of which have contributed significantly to our understanding of who the Mengers were in San Antonio. Thanks so much for joining us.